Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, True Crime Matters, where we talk about and analyze everything true crime. I'm Tara Marie, and it is so nice to have you back. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you are new here, welcome. So there's been a flurry of updates in the Menendez Brothers case, and I wanted to get caught up. So I've covered the Menendez Brothers case at length on my channel, so I'll leave some links down below if you missed all of that. But here is what you need to know about the Menendez Brothers fight for freedom. Erik and Lyle Menendez have served life without parole for murdering their parents 35 years ago. The defense argued that they acted in self-defense after years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. The prosecution insisted it was a greedy bid for inheritance. Two hung juries in the first trial split along gender lines. The women believed the brothers, and the men did not. In the second trial, the judge barred evidence of the abuse, and manslaughter was taken off the table, and the brothers were convicted of first-degree murder. Then, in 2023, their lawyers filed a habeas petition based on two revelations: a 1988 letter from Erik hinting the sexual abuse was ongoing, and a claim by a former RCA boy band member, Roy Rosello, that the brothers' father, Jose Menendez, had raped him. All living members of the Menendez brothers family, who are also the victims in this case, unanimously agree that they want to see the brothers released, and they've spoken with the DA about their wishes. Now, just this past October, spurred by Netflix's Monster, the Erik and Lyle Menendez story, LA District Attorney George Gascon announced he would set a resentencing hearing and recommended the brothers be resentenced, raising hopes for the release. However, in a political twist, Gascon lost the November 2024 election to Nathan Hochman. In a dramatic reversal, Hochman's first act was to recommend a court deny the habeas petition filed by his predecessor, saying the new evidence didn't meet the legal standard for a new trial. So now it's in the judge's hands. Will this new evidence finally help them get released, or will their original conviction stand? So let's dive into some more recent developments and what's to come on May 9th. First of all, have you all been following this explosive back and forth between DA Hochman and the Menendez family and the lawyer for the brothers, Mark Geregos? Because it is wild. It seems to be getting uglier and more dramatic by the day. And I understand Geregos because he is, again, fighting for this family who are also victims in this case. But before I talk about that and the outbursts in court, let's recap. California Governor Newsom ordered the start of an investigation on whether Lyle and Erik pose a public safety risk, which was the first move towards possible clemency. The following day, the family of the brothers spoke out, saying this move gave them a huge sigh of relief because it showed that somebody in a seat of power was paying attention to what they had seen as far as the brothers' rehabilitation. At that time, there was a resentencing hearing scheduled for March 20th and 21st. But then on March 10th, DA Hochman asked the court to withdraw the previous district attorney's motion for resentencing for Lyle and Erik Menendez, calling the brothers' claims of self-defense part of a litany of, quote, lies, saying their position is that the brothers shouldn't be released. Hochman said the brothers told 20 lies and have since admitted to only 4, and he says 16 lies remain unacknowledged. Well, on March 14th, news broke that the March 20th and 21st hearings would be delayed, and it was postponed until April 17th because of disputes over a risk assessment report and a request for the postponement from the DA's office, citing, the wildfires and everything going on. He didn't have a chance to review it in January. So then everyone was just anxiously awaiting this April 17th hearing. Well, April 17th came, and it was apparently a very dramatic day in court, which led to another delay. What was supposed to be a multi-day hearing beginning on April 17th with 10 family members ready to testify, will now resume on May 9th. The delay stems from the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office demanding access to a recently completed risk assessment by the California Board of Parole Hearings, ordered separately, as we said, by Governor Newsom. And he argued that the court cannot properly decide resentencing without that report. In the April 17th hearing, things got kind of explosive when defense attorney for the brothers, Mark Geregos, branded the prosecution's insistence on the parole board assessment a, quote, dog and pony show, while prosecutors countered that the assessment is directly relevant. The prosecution shot back to the judge, saying Geregos' comments were degrading, after which Geregos said, quote, you should be degraded. Well, time out. Geregos is actually pretty funny, and he can be kind of brash, but that was actually kind of amusing. But anyway, and then the judge said, he needed more information about the governor's office risk assessment report and how it can be used by the court, adding, quote, because this is stupid, end quote. After a recess, the judge asked the defense and prosecution for a conference in chambers. And about 10 minutes later, Geregos came back out into the courtroom and directed his team to the door and walked out with about 20 of the Menendez relatives and Erik Menendez's wife, who, again, all support the brothers being released.
The judge, we have just learned, has canceled, Michael, the resentencing of the Menendez brothers. That hearing, Lyle and Erik, has been canceled. The district attorney, Nathan Hochman, had a press conference earlier today, and then after that, Geregos got so upset in court about what he had to say and said he thought he seemed to be biased. So he's now filed a motion, Geregos has, who represents the Menendez brothers, to say D.A. Hochman is biased. He needs to be removed from this case.
Yeah, it's not the first time he's made that claim as well. He claimed that he was sort of freezing the family out, or someone in his employ was freezing the family out of information and wanted to get him kicked off the case. But now he's actually going to file a motion.
Marsy's law, which is a constitutional law in the state of California, requires certain things of prosecutors and duties for victims. I don't know why, in this case, this particular DA, because it certainly was not the last DA, but this particular DA has decided that he's got some other interest to vindicate that has nothing to do with the victims. There are people in this courtroom, or will be in this courtroom, that have been following these proceedings, that have lived this case for 35 years. They're the victims. They have the unique situation of both being victims in this case and relatives of the defendants. Because of that unique nature, apparently the DA has said he gets a constitutional hall pass from doing anything regarding those victims, supporting those victims, notifying those victims, or anything else. He has abused the victims privately. He has abused them publicly. Just this last Friday, you were all here when they flashed grisly crime scene photos on the screen. I had to, in fact, it took me a second, because normally it would be the DA who would jump up and object to that. Instead, it fell upon the defense to jump up and object to that. The DA, to his credit, apologized. And then you know what he did? He went and he organized a protest against the resentencing on Sunday morning while Terry Beralt was lying in a hospital after being found unconscious that morning on Sunday. He organized a protest. He hired the then one lawyer in all of California that supposedly found Kathy Cady, or the Milton Anderson supposedly found the one lawyer, Kathy Cady, who happened to endorse his election. Kathy Cady was then hired as his head of victim services, and when the victims in this case complained, his suggestion was as he had walled her off. Guess who was part of and gave a interview on Sunday at the protest? A woman who claims to be Kathy Cady's Kitty's best friend is now protesting against the resentencing. I would suggest that if anybody was an intrepid reporter, they might ask that woman, did you talk to Kathy Katie? Have you talked to Kathy Katie? Why is it that this DA is abusing the victims? Why is it that he thinks it's appropriate to go hold a press conference when one of his actions 30 hours later arguably put one of the matriarch of this family into the hospital after being found unresponsive, and when her daughter posted on Friday that her mother, when they went to dinner, was extremely upset because in 35 years she'd never seen the picture. I would ask you to ask the DA that. I would ask you to ask the DA why at the last minute he does a Hail Mary filing of a motion to continue and does not notify any of the victims or the victim's lawyer. Why? What is going on? Whose interest is he vindicating? Who has he been taken hostage? Ask him those questions. Ask him if he's vindicating victims' rights, the public's rights, or if he's just trying to placate some disgruntled DAs in his own office for political purposes. Thank you very much. No questions. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Hear from the brothers.
Now, Geregos said that the governor's office has allowed the judge to seek the risk assessment reports, and Geregos noted a strong desire for them to be used only for an upcoming June 13th parole hearing, and he stressed that this comprehensive risk assessment is not yet final. Now, further complicating matters are two other pending motions. One seeks to recuse the LA County District Attorney's Office from the case entirely, and the other challenges whether that comprehensive risk assessment can be admitted at that resentencing hearing. So the judge said both issues need to be resolved, obviously, before the next hearing can move forward. Geregos actually noted the fact that DA Hochman grew up in the Beverly Hills area, and he actually attended the same high school as Erik and Lyle Menendez, so he's been influenced or tainted by the information that he has heard from those sources. So will the judge think that's a valid argument? We have yet to find out. A member of the Menendez family, a cousin named Anna Maria Baralt, said of the April 17th hearing, quote, "Today was a little bit disappointing for us as a family. There have been some delays in this process that were unforeseeable, like the wildfires, that of course we have great patience for. This is another delay that is not so much, but we will continue to show up as a family." So that is where we are. So until May 9th, the brothers' fate and the question of who gets to argue their case and what evidence counts remains unanswered. So what do I think about all this? I am just still so blown away at how very different DA Hochman is from Gascon, the previous DA, who was strongly recommending resentencing for the brothers. And personally, I will say that I completely disagree with much of what DA Hochman's argument is and the reasons that he has highlighted in the other videos I have produced. But basically, I do believe the brothers and at least one other man, Roy Rosello, claims he was abused by Jose Menendez as a child. And, we need to remember that the brothers' argument just wasn't, I was being abused by my father. It was that our father was worried we were going to expose him publicly as a child molester. I think a lot of people don't realize that is the key. It wasn't just that they were being sexually abused and generally abused and threatened, and Jose was an extremely powerful man. But it was the fact that they had in their head that they were threatening their father to expose him as a child molester, and their father, might retaliate against this kind of information getting out publicly. They knew their father wanted to run for office shortly, and they also knew that their mother, Kitty, had purchased a shotgun approximately a year prior. So you have the evidence that, they may have thought their parents were armed, and their parents were under a threat of exposure for being pedophiles. So, and now that all living relatives of the Menendez brothers, even the sisters of both Jose and Kitty Menendez, who were murdered, want to see their sons freed. It is very hard for me, because of that, it is very hard for me to agree with Hochman on many of his points. Now, what do you all think? What do you think that parole board assessment says? The one that was ordered by the governor's office. Do you think it will be positive or negative for the brothers? Let me know what you all think in the comment section down below, but that's going to be it for me today. For those who are new to my channel, my name is Tara Marie, and this has been an episode of True Crime Matters with Tara Marie, where we talk about and analyze everything true crime. If you have gotten any use out of this video, please take a second to subscribe so we don't lose each other. It costs nothing, and it would mean so much to me to have your support along the way. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Be careful out there.